Booklet 3 Outdoor and Underground Adventures. Again, I think you'll admit that's fantastic artwork. So this book is where the referee section really starts to take off. Again, FFC had its own encounter tables. It had its own movement rates, and it allowed you to do weekly or daily movement. As Arneson explains, at a certain point, they moved the campaign onto the outdoor survival map. However, and this was a great article by Captain Hook recently, outdoor survival is there for catch-all adventures. So if you go off the edge of the world, so to speak, where your referee has not prepared a specific outdoor area, no problem. Just progress somewhere onto a portion of the outdoor survival map. I'm already doing this in the playtest. If my PCs move off the edge of the prepared area, not a problem. I will just move to my generation rule set at the back here, which I'll show you in a few minutes, and proceed as normal. If they're just passing through, no problem. You're on the outdoor survival map. You may not know where or how I've oriented the outdoor survival map, but I guarantee you, you are on the outdoor survival map. Okay, moving on. So, encounters. Arneson does give us number appearing for outdoor encounters, and it's only divided into 3 groups. Really strong monsters, you roll 1d6. Mid-level monsters like ghouls, lycanthropes, ogres, trolls, rocks even, wights, 1d20. And for goblins, men, or orcs, 10d20. So you're looking at 10 to 200 instead of 30 to 300 as you have in OD&D. There's a possibility to avoid the encounter that Arneson makes very easy to calculate. Reaction roll, I've kind of I've had to inject that from, basically I looked at rules to the game of Dungeon and I looked at Tunnels and Trolls for this reaction roll table. So it differs from what you see in OD&D, but not greatly. It's possible to parlay, of course. Arneson did have a very complex parlay table that actually took into account how much treasure or what type of treasure the monster was guarding, how much you're bribing the monster, and your alignment vis-a-vis the monster's alignment. So kind of complicated. Look that over more closely. Swimming and drowning rules, always need those. Civilized areas, this is monsters, DNA getting injected in. It's been altered so that it matches OD&D, so not the same table exactly, but very, it rhymes, let's put it that way. Underworld adventures. Arneson gave us rules. They're harder to detect, and some of these were captured, I believe, by Dave McGarry in the Dungeon board game. So, like finding secret doors, that stuff I'm relying on Dungeon to fill in the gaps, to spackle over the cracks, so to speak. Arneson had in his dungeon generation procedure, which again I've figured out using, well, I'll talk about that later. But basically, in the underworld, there were special monsters, special rooms, underworld oddities, all of that flavor that I could find in FFC, and it was in little nuggets here and there. I've extracted and, of course, shaved the serial numbers off so that we can share this using Creative Commons. But there were a couple things that I injected here. Movie theater night. So movie night, you could encounter a movie theater and then break your game and go watch a sword and sorcery movie or a horror movie. I think this might have actually happened. Also, casino, you see this in rules of the game of Dungeon. However, since Gygax relates rules for how to do games of chance, and then also this Twin Studies group that created the rules of the game of Dungeon also had rules about casinos, and then they had rules about sages being in the casinos. So all of that stuff is condensed down in this area, and then some of these tricks and traps we got from Arneson, some of them from the game of Dungeon, etc. But we did not. I keep saying we, the royal we. It's almost like when I'm doing this project I have to split into two minds, right? I'm looking at this with a critical eye as an editor, designer, etc. But I also am trying to channel what was actually going on, right? What would have been like for the players. And I've looked at playtest reports. I've looked at Blackmore documents that have been recently published, Tonnesborg stuff. All that stuff is in my head, and I try to summon it forward and channel myself back to 72. Anyway, so when I say we, it's kind of because I have a split brain kind of thing going on when I'm trying to capture what might have been going on. Okay, Wandering Monsters. This is Arneson's table, and this gives us a clue as to which monsters he was using from Chainmail and which ones he innovated a bit. So the Ochre Jelly, that's Arneson. And it was originally, this blew my mind when I saw it. This was supposed to be the Devil in the Dark from Star Trek, the original series episode. Puddings, that was the Blob from the I think it's 56 movie. I've got it in my playlist to view this week. But you see some things in here that were innovations that got us beyond Chainmail, but they're still very early, right? Still very early stuff. All right. Again, there were 3 groups, so maybe he was implying that the same number of dice should be rolled for encounters, but then again, he gave us the ability to do protection points, which is based on hits to kill, which is, again, I've kind of taken the work that I did in Dragons Beyond and simplified it further. Simplified it because my thinking is, in 72, it was simple. By the time 73 came along, Arneson had more complicated rules, and I think you'll enjoy this stuff. Treasure Troves. This is an injection from, I think this is Tunnels and Trolls, because he gave us no treasure type tables to work with. I will say that you'll see in the random dungeon generation that I relied on McGarry's rules from the game of Dungeon the Board Game for those treasure troves. Those are much richer, whereas these are not, they're not going to be as satisfying. So maybe you mix match. Maybe sometimes you do a treasure trove here. Maybe sometimes you use the solo rules to generate treasure troves. And you can always multiply this treasure by the level of the dungeon to kind of bump it up to the next level. Okay, magical prizes. This stuff, again, a lot of magic items in First Fantasy campaign. I tried to strip out the stuff that seemed to come later. And this would be the stuff that you see, well, let's just put it this way. Stuff like the Ring of X-Ray Vision. That's not in here. Now, there was a Potion of Sight, which I left out because I have no idea what that actually was. But you see things that were early, and there's kind of a sci-fi twist here, too. Yeah. There was a potion of human obedience and a potion of animal obedience. That's different. Poison. We know that the fermented juice of the superberries was poisonous because Arneson tells us that in FFC. I've dropped that from the list here, but I have made poison something that you can do. People don't realize that poison was in chainmail. Take a look at the Asian troop types. There's one of them that has a rapid fire crossbow with poison bolts. Interesting stuff. Relics. This is, I've taken a little bit of Phil Barker here and maybe a little bit of Days of Nights Wargame to kind of give us relic rules. Again, trying to add some flavor to the cleric that was maybe lost along the way as we strayed away from pure wargaming and into what D&D became. D&D started to build on its own tropes. I'm trying to strip that back. There was one article that I found on the original cleric that predates the ability. So there's no turning undead capability in here. You can present a holy symbol. You can use holy water. That does have effects. But there is not a turn undead. That came later. But anyway, you'll see all that stuff in the bibliography if you look for it. Yeah. treasure maps, those were an early innovation too. You will see that there is a metal wand. So in one of the playtests, the players were doing a medieval counter siege, I think, and they had revolvers. I'm putting the revolvers in. Same thing, he's got in FFC, he's got a wand of lightning bolts that he refers to twice, and the second time he refers to it as a ray gun, basically. So I give you a wand of zapping, that's basically a ray gun. And yeah, armor. This was interesting too. So this is rules of the game of Dungeon. When you were trying to figure out the number of pluses that your magic sword or armor had, McGarry gave us a table. I've extrapolated that table and expanded it out. The numbers differ a bit just because when I extrapolated it out, I saw a pattern that I needed to replicate. So if you'll notice, here's the breakpoint where we go to 2s, and then here's the breakpoint where we go to 3s. And so you can see the demarcation here. Yeah, as you go deeper in the dungeon, the chance of finding a +2 or a +3 goes up. On level 1, you've got a 1 in 12 chance of finding a +2 sword or a +2 piece of armor. Okay, artifacts. There were tons of artifacts in FFC. No description of any of them. Well, with the exception of the Blue Rider. There's a little bit of description of that. So I was able to gather enough pieces here and there. Oh, the Jewel of the Id and the Id monster, which is basically a throwback to Forbidden Planet. Yes, that stuff's there. Odin's spear is in there. Thor's hammer. So I looked at classic. I think in that case, I looked to Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, which was Kuntz and some other folks. Okay, yeah. Legends concerning artifacts. For Arneson, if you're a character seeking an artifact, there's a 75% chance that the DM is going to give you a false rumor. Not only that, he gave you instructions on what that rumor should pertain to. And in some cases, it could be very enticing to go after that rumor. So just be aware that I have replicated that and came up with a table that matches up with these artifacts and a magic sword artifact. We'll get to that in a minute.